Hi there guys, Ken here, your Thrifty Apprentice. Welcome back to the studio for another Thrifty review. Today we are going to be taking a look at none other than Kuretake Gansai Tambi. I was gifted this set by Miss Diane Zimmerman out in Houston, Texas, who not too long ago sent me a very nice care package, which I did a gift haul video for, and I will link that in the video description in case anyone is interested in seeing it. So let's jump right into this review, taking a look at the package that the paint comes in. This set I have is the 18 color set. Now let it be known that you can pick up the Gansai Tambi watercolors in many different sets that come in different counts, from 12 to 18 to 24, 36. I think there's even a 72. I'm not sure, but I know that there are a lot of sets out there that you can find. Packaging was just a clear piece of plastic, not much. There is labeling on the inside. It says Kuretake Gansai Tambi 18 color set. This is Japanese traditional paint for professional artists and crafters. It can be used as a gouache and watered down for use as a watercolor. Ideal for sketch, illustration, and more. And then that's listed in different languages. There is a color swatch chart which lists the stock numbers that they go by, as well as the color names in English. It says that it is a water-based pigment. And the only other information is that it was established in 1902 and that these paints are made in Japan. There is no light, fast, or pigment information on the packaging at all. Let's take a look at the box here. This is a really nice, I like all things Japanese, I'll be honest. I love this box. I like the really earthy, organic feel that it has. There is no writing on the box in English. I don't want to flip it upside down because of the way the paints are in here, but it's just a plain cardboard box. Nothing's printed on the back. Let's go ahead and look inside the box here. You're going to see that you have the 18 colors lined up, and I was really happy that they're lined up in rainbow order already. So that was, I liked that. That was a great thing off the top for me. On the inside of the box here, there is mostly Japanese writing, not a lot that you can understand if you read English. However, it does give you a swatch chart, and I'm not sure if this is meant for you to actually swatch the paints out on, but it's cardboard, so I didn't bother wasting my time. I tend to just swatch my paints out on the papers that I typically paint on with them. But there are the color names listed in the order that they come arranged inside the palette, so that's a good thing. This little plastic tray comes inside the box covering the paints, and I'm assuming it's meant to be used for exactly what I did, which is mixing paint on. There isn't any, this setup for the way these paints come doesn't include like any plastic palettes or any painting space, so you can just like take that piece of plastic that comes on top and lay it inside the top of the box, and you can use that area to mix in, or you'll have to use you know, a travel palette or what have you, or maybe a studio palette whenever you decide to paint with these. Now they come in full pans, which is a Japanese full pan, which is completely different from an American full pan. They will come out. Let me see if I can get one out here so you guys can see. And see, that's a pretty nice size pan, and it has a pretty decent amount of paint in it. The pans just have the stock number on them. Again, no light, fast, or pigment information listed anywhere inside the box or on the pans themselves, but these are some really nice size pans. And if you wanted to just paint with, you know, 1 or 2 colors, you can always just take these out and sit them on like a ceramic plate or palette and paint that way. Or you could find something else to make a little palette out of. Like I was actually thinking about using this little travel box that some other stuff had came in and just kind of lining them up in there, which I may just do. But anyway, so you will have to have some other means of, excuse me, you know, mixing your paints, because it doesn't come with any attached palettes to it. The paints are semi-mush, so they do not require re-wetting or you to pre-wet them before you paint with them. They activate really well. Seriously, a wet brush tapping the paint and it reactivates right away. So they were really good in that aspect. Now, as you can see inside the pan, the colors are very concentrated and rich. You can't really distinguish all of them, so it is definitely my suggestion to swatch your paints. That's going to help you a lot as you paint with these. These paints are really thick in consistency, and when I originally opened the palette, a few of them had cracked. You can see here the what is this, rose madder cracked, the violet cracked. And that was when I originally opened the paints. Now, I'm not sure if that was because of the handling and the process of them getting from where they came to me, or if that's because they are so much like a gouache that they crack in the palette, because gouache is infamous for that. So that's pretty much all of the physicalities of the paints. The names are not listed on the little palettes here. Is just a stock number, and again, it's listed in order on the inside of the box. So that's why I'm assuming that it's meant for you to be able to paint or mix there that way. So we'll close that up and let's take a look at the swatch sheets and talk about the paints all together. So can you guys see that? I hope that's in frame. So let me just start off by saying I really enjoyed painting with these paints. I'm a gouache fan, I'm a gouache fanatic, and just like the packages say, these paints work a lot like gouache does. Now, I do believe that they're formulated more like a watercolor, because once you water them down, they do work just like watercolors, and they become very thin and transparent. So here I swatched out the paints, and they're swatched out inside this little stamp set that I got based off of a recommendation by Lindsay, the Frugal Crafter. She has a lot of great ideas, and a lot of her ideas pour over into my studio because they are great ideas, and I love her for that. And she's a very open and warm person. She wouldn't mind. But so I swatched out the paints, and I watered them down. At the top, of course, there's a heavy consistency, and then they came down into a more watered down consistency at the bottom of each triangle. I'm sorry, each rectangle. I'm not sure why I said triangle. So the paints were very vibrant and very pretty and very rich, and there was not a huge color shift between them being wet to them drying down. Now, these swatches are done on B Aqua 100% cotton 140 pound paper, so they do stand up, or they do have a better chance of being that rich and pigmented in color on a more sturdy paper. And I'm going to show you why I say that in just a few minutes. But the colors were really rich, and I do like the vibrancy of them. There is a nice green selection. Not sure why there are so many greens and so little of so many other colors. There's quite a few reds in the palette as well, and considering the fact that this is only 18 colors and one of them happens to be a white and one of them happens to be a black, then you look at the fact that you have 4 greens, 4 reds, and then you have 3 blues, and one of them, which I just feel was honestly just kind of useless, the ultramarine pale. I think it's supposed to be more like a cobalt color, but it's basically the pigment that they use for the ultramarine with possibly white in it to stretch the pigment. Now, this is a student grade paint. This is not a professional grade paint, so definitely I do understand from the door that there are some fillers in it, and that some of the small granulation that is seen in the paint may possibly come from fillers more so than pigment. Now, this is a Japanese watercolor, and we have reviewed other Japanese watercolors on the channel before. Sakura Koi. So that's the paint, or the performance of paint that I sort of had in mind as I started to use these. Now, I did some color mixing with them, an opacity test, a glazing test, and a lifting test. So we're going to talk about all of that, and then we're going to also look at some paintings that I did with them. So that I can gain the experience that I needed to kind of offer my opinion. Now, of course, you guys know my videos are not sponsored, and all of the opinions in them are solely my own. And you don't have to listen to a thing I say. You know what I mean? I might not know a hill of beans as far as you're concerned, but I do like to put the information out there that I've experienced, just in case there's someone who's interested and it may actually help them. So let's talk about transparency. These paints are in normal consistency, especially using them straight out of the pan, pretty thick and more like a gouache, just like the packaging says. So in that instance, they are pretty opaque, semi-transparent opaque. They layer really well in that consistency, and they just offer really nice coverage and a vibrant payoff. Now, when you water them down, to make them perform more as a watercolor than a gouache, they do become more transparent. And you can see from the opacity test here that there is not a lot of sedimentation or debris, should I say, on my black lines. So there was not a lot of fillers in them, although I'm sure there are some. There's not so many that it makes the paint cloudy. Of course, that was just using them in single layers. Because there's no pigment information, we have no idea whether or not they use multiple pigments in order to make up these colors, which of course we know that multiple pigment colors lend to muddy mixing when you're doing color mixing. So I gave it a try. I used the most primary of the colors that came in the set, which was the red, the ultramarine, and the lemon yellow. I felt like those were the three most primary in the set, and I tried to do a little color mixing here, and I did water them down a lot in consistency to use them more as a watercolor, which is why it's so light here, but you still get the point. I used the red and the lemon yellow, and I got a pretty nice looking orange here, which is shades different from the cadmium scarlet that's actually included, which is more the reddish orange tone. Here I mixed the red and the ultramarine and got a nice violet. Of course, shades difference again. And then, of course, the tonal difference in the shades will depend on whether you're using them watered down as a watercolor or you're using them in a more heavy body consistency as a gouache. However, you are able to mix them and get other colors other than what's included in the 18 color set. And as you can see, the colors mix really cleanly. The blue and the yellow mix cleanly to make a green. The burnt sienna and the ultramarine mix cleanly to make a gray, which could be a very nice shadow color to prevent from having to use black, which we all know can leave a watercolor painting looking flat, especially if you're using the natural black. Now, don't get me wrong, there come times when you have to use a black, and if I had my choice between the two, I would prefer to see a black in the set than a white, because typically whites in sets are really just used to add body to the other colors, to lighten them up, so in most cases. So I would much prefer the black than the white if I had to have it in the set. So again, the colors did mix cleanly, so there was no issue with the color mixing. So next I decided that I would do a salt test, and here I just covered a flat wash and sprinkled salt in it to see how the paints would reactivate to this, to this technique. And it turned out really well. It took really well to the salt. There's some really nice blossoms and blooms in there, so that would lend well if you decided to use that technique. Here I just wanted to kind of play around with the paints. I call myself at my first attempt of painting loose. I'm trying to teach myself to loosen up and not to be so uptight about painting. And I would love to get into that loose style and make some beautiful loose landscape and pictures and flower pictures. So I wanted to try to do that here. The paints performed pretty well first time out the gate. I didn't do any sketching. I used the paints to sketch and then the paints to paint in the picture. It's not a masterpiece. It wasn't meant to be a masterpiece. It was really just meant for me to get my initial impression of how the paints were going to actually perform with water. Now, I think that they flow really well. They handle really well. They put me in the mind just a little bit of how core flows. Now, that's just me. I'm not sure about anybody else's experience. But in my experience, especially in wet into wet washes, the paints had a beautiful flow to them. So that's kind of what that first little doodle was all about. And me just layering to see just how gouache of a feel I could get from it. So then I did a lift test. And you can see here, I didn't do it on each one of them, but I just did it on enough of them to see how I could lift the paints on some of the colors that I thought would be a little harder to lift. The turquoise, sap green, reds, which typically stain really well. I should have done it on the violet, which, side note, this is cobalt violet, which kind of threw me off. I wasn't sure. I mean, maybe that's just what they call it because it is a Japanese company, and they do tend to give their color names some funny names in contrast to what we may be used to hearing them called. So maybe that's what that was. But the paints lifted really well, and this was after they have had days to dry, because I actually didn't do the lift test until like maybe 3 or 4 days after I originally swatched the paints out and did a glaze on top of them. So yeah, they lifted really well up until this point, considering the clean color mixing, the vibrancy of colors, the fact that it's not a huge color shift. They lift well. They don't have a lot of sedimentation as far as opacity is concerned. So there are fillers, but they're not so many that it clouds up any of the color mixing. So I was kind of impressed up until this point. And then I wanted to really get into doing some painting with them to see how they would work with my particular style, because we do all have our own style of painting. So I did a couple of tutorials which went up on the channel, and we'll take a look at some of the paintings. Now, this was one of some violets that I did with the Gansai Tambi, with the combination of, I want to say, some colored pencil. Well, I'm pretty sure it was colored pencils. I think it was Artiso. But they work really well in a mixed media environment. I love them, especially in the gouache consistency, because they help to lay down pigment, and they help to make a paper more toothy to grab other media. That way it can be laid on top of it. Not that I have that much of an issue with that when it comes to using this Master's Touch paper, because it has that velvety texture, that thick velvety texture, which grabs pigment really well. But if I was using a smoother paper like, say, Kansen, or maybe the B, even this paper, it would, the gouachiness helps to add more texture in case you're trying to do mixed media layering. And I do like the way that this turned out. I think it turned out really well. The lighter washes were done with the paint diluted a lot, so it did give me a really transparent background in order to be able to do some layering of darker colors for contrast on top of. So I think it worked out really well in that aspect. So then there was the pop art poppy tutorial that went up on the channel not too long ago. Again, I used the paints here. This is one thing that I love about these paints. They're not streaky. Like the Koi watercolors, the other Japanese, and we're going to be taking a look at some comparisons with swatch sheets in just a minute, but like they have a funny granulation to them, which lets you definitely know that they have fillers in them, but they leave a streakiness when you're painting with them that these don't. So I love the fact that the Tambi paints have a very smooth finish to them. Love that, love that. So I think that this turned out really well. Again, the paints performed well. They allowed me to do layering without lifting the colors up under it. And that's something that you don't find, or something that I haven't found with a lot of economical budget paints. You either have the ones that lift well, or you have the ones that layer well. But to find one that does both is pretty rare when it comes to budget paints. This is different because it allows you to layer when you need to without lifting the paints up under it. But as you can see, it allows you to lift right back to the white of the paper whenever you need to, even in the heavier staining colors. So another great point about the paint. More recently, I just finished up this little painting of, what is this called? I write them on the back. It's called a cyclamen flower. And you guys know I'm predominantly a flower landscape artist, so I'm always looking for a flower to draw and practice on. So again, I use the paints here. Now the difference with this particular painting is that I actually use the white to add body to the color, and as you can see, it gave me sort of a highlight feel. And it was the white was mixed in with the rose madder, which was the lighter tonal color. And then for the shadows, I used the rose madder deep. So basically the same color with just a little bit more pigmentation in the second one. And they work well together. They are predominantly the same color, but different enough for me to layer them and you to be able to see the difference. So again, all around great paints. Let's talk about price point when it comes to these paints. And I did make a few notes so that I wouldn't forget. So right now, due to the fact that, the world is pretty much on a lockdown and we're all practicing stay at home, and it seems to me, and I don't know about anyone else, that prices seem to be inflating a little bit. And maybe that's just me. But I've been looking at some art supplies that I saved in my Amazon shopping cart, and the prices on them have changed dramatically from when I saved them. So I had to do a little digging in order to find these paints at a more reasonable price if you decided to purchase them now. Keep in mind, things will change. The world will hopefully go back to normal soon. And, I think regular pricing will kick back in. But, just for the time being, here are some places that you can source the paints from if you found anything that I've said interesting and you want to add them to your art supplies. You can get the paints on Amazon right now. Currently, this 18-box set is $32.86. Of course, you're going to get free shipping if you are a Prime member. If not, then that's just a bridge you'll have to cross. $32.86, I believe, is a little bit steep for this particular set. I have seen it priced a lot better than that on Amazon by different sellers in the past, especially right around Christmas time and around the beginning of the year. Like I said, just here recently when this epidemic thing started, I do honestly believe some prices inflated. I might be wrong, and if I am, then please forgive me, but that's just how I feel about some things that I've seen. The paints, this 18-box set can be ordered from Walmart for $33.92. And right now they are offering free shipping. There are no criteria to meet in order to get free shipping on this product. Again, $33.92, which is higher than the $32.86 price point at Amazon. So again, I do not believe that buying them from Amazon or Walmart is the best buy. However, I do need to let you know they are available from those suppliers in case they are all you can get to or order from. You can get this 18-box set from Jerry's Autorama. Now, here's where it starts to get interesting. For $16.77. Of course, with Jerry's, you have to pay shipping unless you meet their $45 order minimum criteria. So, you are looking, if you're not going to order anything else, if you're not planning on ordering $45 worth of products, then you're looking at paying $16.77 plus shipping and handling and tax. So again, you're looking at, I don't know, it could still be in the 30s of dollars. It just depends on how you choose to buy them. But I think that adding them, if you're already ordering other art supplies into the cart and getting them for $16.77, if you're going to be getting more than $45 worth of products with free shipping, is definitely worth it. And then I also found them, as far as my normal shops that I shop at, on Etsy for $17.50. And of course, with Etsy, you would have to pay shipping and handling as well. But it really just depends on where what seller is coming from. So you can basically still get the paints for under $20, give or take, depending on what you're paying for shipping and handling, which I still think puts them in a very budget-friendly range and makes them very affordable, especially considering the fact that you're getting 18 colors in the box. The other upside to this is that this is what I consider a hybrid. I don't consider it a watercolor. I don't consider it a gouache because it is honestly directly in the middle. You can use it as both. For that reason, almost alone, it makes it almost one of the best beginner student grade paints, because you get the best of both worlds. You can use it to practice your watercoloring, and if you're interested in gouache or feel like gouache is something you may want to start exploring and you don't want to spend the money on gouache, you already have a watercolor that, used in a thicker consistency with less water, is going to give you a very, very, very gouache-like effect. The ultimate comparison for the two would be between the Kuretake Gansai Tambi and the Koi watercolors. My point goes to Tambi. My point goes to Tambi for a couple of reasons. One, it's definitely less fillers in the Kuretake than there is in the Sakura. Two, the colors do not shift as much with the Kuretake as they do with the Sakura. Although Sakura Koi colors, I mean, it's not a bad paint at all. I don't knock it out the window. It's just that when you're comparing the two, this one just seems to be a better quality of paint. This one, now they both actually will kind of act as a gouache, because for what it's worth, I think that the Koi watercolors are pretty opaque. People may disagree with me, which everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but so I don't think that the Kuretake has a huge hands up on Sakura in that aspect as far as being a gouache. As far as the palette goes, I think because this is the pocket fill sketch box, which comes with the lit out palettes and the water brush, this is definitely a better setup with the Sakura than it is for the Kuretake. But I don't mind the setup for the Kuretake. I think this is cute, and I actually love using these paints. So my point goes to Kuretake, and I would definitely suggest the Kuretake over the Sakura any day. So there you go, guys. You have the comparison. Bottom line is, I think the paints are great. I would definitely recommend them. I think that they are a great budget-friendly, affordable paint. You get pretty decent number of colors. You will have to have something to mix on, because they don't come with a palette, not unless you're going to use that little clear plastic that comes covering the paints as one, which you can with no problem. They're going to lift. You're going to be able to layer. You can water them down and use them in the watercolor aspect. You can leave them in a thicker consistency and use them as a gouache. They're going to work very well as a mixed media product for that reason. So yeah, definitely. Of all of the student grade paints that we have reviewed, as far as recommendations is concerned, I didn't say the ones I like the most, but as far as recommending, basing on all of the things that we talk about that makes a paint affordable for a beginner, I definitely recommend Kuretake Gansai Tambi. I think that any of the sets, when you factor out how much it would be per pan, is worth it. So there you have it, guys. I hope that information was informative for you. I hope you heard something that is going to help you make a decision about whether or not you want to add the Kuretake to your art collection. If you like this video and the information that you heard, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe so that you can keep up with the new content that's coming up on the channel. Go ahead and use the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know if you have the paints, if you use them, what do you think of them? Are you inspired and enticed to get them now that you've watched the video? I would love to hear from you. Head on over to the Facebook page and like the Thrifty Apprentice there. Keep up with the things that we do both on and off camera. I'm going to plead with you guys, please share the video. Even if you have a very small following, maybe somebody out there will like something that they see and they'll come on over and join us here in YouTube land for all of the great things that we do in the art world. With that said, please remember that I enjoy everything I do and the time that I spend with you guys. And as I tell you at the end of every single video, just keep painting.